He is the mayor from Pawtucket, and he's got a lot on his plate, and he's here tonight. Terrific to have Don Grebien into the broadcast this evening with the Paw Sox leaving and all the other things that are challenging about running a city as important as Pawtucket is to this overall community. He's got a lot going on, and I've got a lot of questions for him. So the affable mayor of Pawtucket will join us here momentarily. How are you? Good Monday to you. Another weekend in the books. Patty's Day tomorrow. Calm down. I drove through Newport Saturday night because I was visiting a friend there. I wasn't bar hopping. I had called some high school basketball games on the radio, took the bridge in the fog, went over to Newport, and saw one of the better brawls I've seen on a street corner in a long time. You know that faraway look people get when they're really, really, really drunk and some guy hammering away, banging on them. I'm thinking, Happy Patty's Day to everybody. I don't understand, really. When it gets to that level, just go home. Like Bueller. What are you doing here? Go home. Anyway, behave yourselves tomorrow, will you? Enjoy a good time, for heaven's sake. Shorter rundown tonight. In fact, let me peek at the screen. Kevin will throw it up there. That's all I've got. And don't be insulted, and don't get your, everything in a bundle over this Mommy Gina thing. There's a reason for that. PC's in, URI didn't quite make it, but they've got another tournament to play and need your support and your state of mind in response to our Friday program, I believe. We have some input from you. All right, let's dig in real quick. I just want to make a mention. I want to take some time with the mayor, so I'm going low on the levels here for the rundown, but I could not ignore this. Now, already you're going, how dare you, Dan? In reference to the governor. But it could be daddy. And in fact, there have been other politicians that are referred to as, you're not my daddy. But when I saw Newsmakers, a must-view on Fox Providence and WPRI television with Tim White and Ted Nesi, usually I watch it on a Sunday morning, get my little bike workout in downstairs and watch the show. I almost fell over the handlebars at the end of the program when Gina Raimondo said this.
And on a personal level, I just feel responsible for everybody. I feel when you're treasurer, you worry about the pensions. Now it's everything. It's the economy, it's health care, I went to work mall the other day to read to some kids, and I stood in line for almost an hour because people just came up to me to tell me about their problems. Who's out of work, who can't afford their mortgage, I feel responsible to take care of everybody.
Oh, stop, Governor, stop. Now, there are probably some of you who are thinking, well, what's wrong with that, Dan? I mean, she's compassionate, she cares. It's nice to have a politician that cares. Folks, I got to tell you something, man. When you try to be all things to all people, you're nothing to everybody. In the political game and in a lot of things in this world. Now, you can call it a mommy complex, you can call it a parent complex, you can call it a Jesus complex. But this is a little bit of a window into where Governor Raimondo's mindset is right now. And I think it's reflected in her budget proposals, where she is trying to accomplish way too much, too shallow, too wide. So we'll see as we go. And while the governor, obviously very relaxed with Tim and Ted in a nice setting, kind of, let on a little bit about how she perceives herself. I will tell you, that kind of compassion is also a result of a huge ego. Now, look, we all have one. I have to have one to do this show. I have to have one to do the radio show. But it's a pretty huge ego that is functioning behind a mindset that I worry about taking care of everybody. And by the way, this is a trend. Do you remember the campaign?
I know what it's like to have someone save your life. Twice. Gina Raimondo helped expand the Crossroads shelter. And as treasurer, she fixed the Crime Victims Fund. It had a 900 case backlog. Gina saved my life. Twice.
Okay. I would be inspired by a leader that says, look, I got some ideas and a vision on how to get there, and I need everyone to get behind me, and I need you to work hard and be a self-starter and take care of business and produce and be part of the recovery and all of that. I don't need to hear about the long list of people with their hands out which is the trend in America today, and here in Rhode Island, saying, please help me, Gina, please help me. It's a bad early trend. Alrighty. Good trend for PC. Just a quick sports note. Pretty cool. Headline, 6th seed in the tourney. They're going to Columbus, and the PC players were all excited, obviously.
Just excited to be in the tournament back-to-back years. Whoever you play is going to be a great game.
I mean, it's a great feeling. Whenever you can sit down and see yourself, your name getting called, playing in the NCAA tournament, it's a great feeling. You know, I don't know anything about either of those two teams. I'm sure our coaching staff, we went right back into the locker room and we started scouting, so come Friday, we'll be more than ready.
Well, I do. They play the winner of Boise State and my alma mater, Dayton. Dayton got hammered in this tournament seeding. Last team in, ironically, they're in the play-in game, which means they have to play an extra game, but they play it at home at Dayton where they do the play-in games. And if they win, they only drive 70 miles to Columbus, and they'll take half the arena with them. PC has a bad draw here. PC is in great shape for this tournament and is playing remarkably well. But I will tell you, despite a tired Dayton team, that's not a team that you want. If it's Boise State, I doubt it will be. Anyway, we'll watch that as we go. And then URI doesn't get in. We knew that when they lost to Dayton in the semifinal of the A10. But I will tell you that this game tomorrow night is all important for URI. If you're a URI fan and you're one who's come back to the arena, to the Ryan Center over the last few weeks, you should keep coming. It's always an affordable ticket. Iona is the opponent in round one of the National Invitational Tournament. It's all part of the progression of that program. It's a good thing. So that's a 7 o'clock game tomorrow night at the Ryan Center. They're going to need your help because it's spring break for the kids. All righty, your state of mind, 228-1886 is the voicemail. Of course, you can email me and you can Facebook post and you can tweet at me. Here's a voicemail reacting to Friday's program with Hillary Davis from the ACLU.
Being a minority myself, have been stopped numerous times. And it's because of the fact of they can say things to you that will upset you, and they want you to come out of the box. They also want to try to find contraband on you, which is most of the time, you know, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But it's just harassment.
Interesting perspective. Hillary Davis from the ACLU showed us some graphs Friday night. If you missed the show, foxprovidence.com. ACLU every once in a while gets it right, you know, and some of the data was actually quite horrifying over the police stops. But it's worth a longer conversation, which we don't have time for tonight. But watch the show. You'll find it on foxprovidence.com, and it was an interesting conversation, no doubt. All right, Mayor Grebien, next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a minute. And so weeks ago, you saw the headline that for some was a shock heard around the world. If you were a Paw Sox fan, they're on the move, and there was the rendering for the city. And they're now in their second phase of diligence after buying the Paw Sox, the new ownership under Skeffington et al. And the poor guy that had to sit there and listen to them say, "Dear John, we're leaving," is the good mayor of Pawtucket. Welcome in. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So roll it back for me.
Yep.
Give me the quick background on what you knew when and all that.
Quick story, and I'll keep it as short as I can. We heard, like everybody else, back in November around Thanksgiving when it broke in the Boston Globe, you know, that it was going to be sold. Did a lot of the due diligence, reached out to the people who said, you know, there are certain things that have happened, we can't talk about them, it's confidentiality, yada, yada, yada. So somewhere in December, you know, you started hearing names. You heard Mr. Skeffington, you heard Terry Murray. So somewhere in December, we had reached out to a couple of people that we know that had connections to him to try to get in there to say, okay, can we have the discussion? A personal friend of mine, attorney, had reached out to Mr. Skeffington, and basically Jim had said, it's, you know, it's a private business deal. We can't talk about it at the right time. We'll talk about it. So we did everything we can, you know, to try to find out who to have the discussion. Mike Tamboro and Lou Schweckheimer, who are great people, had a great relationship with the organization for years. Even the city has always. The
principals in the team.
Yeah, in the team. So, so the week, that Sunday that we had the meeting on that Friday, their consultant or their lobbyist, Bob Goldberg, who's an attorney in the city of Pawtucket, had reached out to the office and asked for if Tony Pyrus, who's my director of administration, who I'm sure you're well aware of, was involved years ago at the House. In part of saving Pawtucket Red Sox were staying there back in 1998, if we'd be willing to meet the new owners. Absolutely, excited to meet the new owners, and so we're going in there not knowing anything other than we're meeting the owners. So we get there on a Sunday night, and it was Tony and myself and Jim and Bob Goldberg, the four of us. And we went through the, all the respect thing, we went through the owners, everything was under confidentiality, had asked us to keep it private until Monday. They wanted to make the announcement. And, we did, in all due respect, I'm going to call it dog and pony show, how good's Pawtucket, the feel good. And then at some point in the conversation, the hammer came down and said, that we're moving to Providence. He was very respectful. As a private businessman, he made the commitment that, the foundations that they currently give back to in the community, the money would be there. We had a plan that we had been talking with for the last couple of years. That the Pawtucket Foundation had put down on paper, and we were trying to give it to them, and they were just set on Providence, and that's why nobody could get to them or have the conversation.
So this thing was cold turkey.
Yeah, from us. Yeah,
you learned this thing cold turkey.
Yep.
That's the nature of the game. Baseball and transactions within the industry are very confidential. To their credit, they're able to keep their due diligence pretty quiet. But they didn't go through the cursory exercise of saying, now listen, Mayor, we know you've had conversations, because clearly Mike Tamburo, the phenomenal boss of the Sox, must have informed them that there were ongoing conversations with Pawtucket about upgrading the McCoy surroundings and the like. They didn't ask for that once.
No, not at all.
And so to this date, they really haven't taken a gander at it.
No. Well, we gave it to them that night.
Yeah.
In fact, this past week, that just went by.
You go right into the briefcase type of thing? Is that
no, it stayed on the table.
Yeah.
There was no briefcase. Again,
Did
respectful.
they take it off the table?
I'm
Or did it
hoping when he
remain on the
left.
table?
I hope when he left, he took it with him.
All right,
Good.
what is it that you thought you might be able to do and still might be able to do if this thing came back your way, doubtful but possible, to upgrade McCoy, the region around it, and to make it what's known now in the vernacular as a destination location?
So quickly, it's really about the fan base, okay? When you start to look at it, it's about the fans who have made that organization what it is today. So how do we talk about what the destination is, and what our discussions with Mike Tamburo and the previous organization was, what's the attraction? Because everybody goes, they come through our city, they park and they go into the stadium and they get that feel, just like a Disney feel. So we had talked about, lining the streets with signage, little things, to do what we could, but we really need to give them more space. So we have Parasol Field, which is a few acres on the side. We have gone to the state 2 years ago, and we were granted some funds for a turf field. So we were looking at potentially moving that field out of there, putting turf field somewhere else and getting extra use. Fire station. So we looked at the city land that we owned around there, and how do we clean that up? It really came down to having the dollars to invest in there. Our calculation, the Pawtucket Foundation and many business people feel that it would be cheaper for them to invest in and build up around. Now, that's if they wanted to stay as a family
Now, is
destination.
that the kind of spot where, not unlike in Baltimore, where Larry Lucchino has built, in Pittsburgh, where you can literally walk into a restaurant on the outside of the park
Absolutely.
and then walk in? I mean, that kind of concourse redevelopment, is that what we're talking about?
Yep, absolutely. You could do those types of development. You could do something really more family-oriented, and I'm not sure what that is. It depends on what the business model is.
Who would invest? Who would be the principal investor in that kind of change around the stadium? Because you've got a kind of a funky situation. Makes sense, but it's three-way. You've got, the city leases to the state then leases to the ball team.
Yeah.
And you really don't have a big financial liability or responsibility there.
Well, as well as, or do we get anything for it? You're
Right.
absolutely right. So we don't, but what our hope would be is that the money that the state had already put in, and that's why the arrangement is what it is, that if they were going to go out, could we do a bond to reinvest around that community and work that out? The city clearly doesn't have that type of money. We have some bonding capacity that we'd be willing to, throw into the destination, but we never got to that. It was really understanding what the model was.
Could you make it more accessible, both from Massachusetts and from the S-curves on 95?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to make it as accessible as coming right on and off the highway if they pick Providence, and that was one of the attractions for Providence. But we can do a lot of transportation things. We could do busing. I would argue that from the Attleboro commuter rail is as close to McCoy as Providence is to that.
Yeah.
So I think there are things that we could do to bring that infrastructure.
The governor was lukewarm on newsmakers. I thought this was interesting. Can we roll that?
I need to see the details. I'm open to anything that creates jobs and stimulates economic development. I'm not open to, yet again, being taken advantage of by another baseball deal. This could be a terrific deal, and I certainly am open to seeing it. I know many of the owners are from Rhode Island, so I'm very open. It'd be wonderful it could happen, but it's got to be a right deal for Rhode Island. I'm a watchdog for the taxpayers, and if there's a deal to be had that's good for the people and that creates jobs and stimulates 195, then that's a good thing to do.
Okay, so you're going to sit in an interesting seat here. You're the jilted one. The city's the jilted one. How reactive, proactive, political are you going to get as the mayor with the disgruntled fan base that will be lost at McCoy? They still got to play there at least 2 years.
Right.
So what's your disposition? You're going to be their best friend as they leave, or worst nightmare?
Probably somewhere in between. Number one is we do have to have a business relationship with them, and the last thing we want to do is ruin any chance that we can or I can from administration to build that relationship with them. What we've been trying to advocate out there through social media is when people are doing their online petitions. The best way we can win is to have everybody go into the season this year, for the games, and identifying that they want it to stay, because it's really going to be the fan base that drives it. It's about dollars from the investors. The governor has clearly supported us, and a lot of the conversation we had, she understands that it's very important to Pawtucket.
Has she winked at you over this and said, listen, I'm still with you?
Yeah, we've had those discussions.
But
and
do you feel like she's got a quiet agenda to try to convince these guys to stay at McCoy?
No, I think that her priority is going to be Rhode Island. I've made it clear that it needs to be Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Dan, we sat last week with the speaker. We've had numerous meetings up at the State House over the last 2 months, 2.5 months since all of this started, trying to get a feel for who's on what page or what base for that matter. Sure. And so we have a meeting tomorrow, as we're taping today. Tomorrow, we're going to be meeting with both the governor and the Senate president tomorrow, 2 different meetings. We've met with our delegation. We're taking the approach that we want them here. That if their state is going to incentivize them to leave Pawtucket Sure. and go into Providence, that they have something that they owe us.
And end of conversation, I mean, we go on forever. If you do lose them, and you likely could, what would you do?
That becomes the next question. We need to get a better understanding of what the reuse is. One of the things that we're asking for, and we're going to be sitting down with Mr. Skeffington over the next few weeks. We sent him another letter, and he's acknowledged and accepted that we're going to have some time together. I need to understand if the building is as bad as they say it is, what the studies show, because I don't want to be out there spending, on the facility, another facility study if I can get one that's already been paid for.
You got a couple old high schools. Why
Yep.
Why not just reinvest in the city itself and put a great athletic, educational facility there? Isn't that something that's been chatted about in town?
That's been chatted about. It's really about what's the highest and best use. And one of the reasons is that's been chatted about, and it's still too early, as you're doing this, but it might be better that we consolidate all of our schools and some of the governmental entities onto that property if it was sustainable, and then be able to, Atonement High School, which might have a higher value to sell, might bring more revenue in than that site would. Those are the types of things that we have to do,
It's hard for you because you got to be planning what your out plan is, yet you're still fighting.
Right.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what do you think your chances are of saving this deal?
No, I mean, it's probably 1 or 2.
But worth fighting for.
Absolutely, no, it's worth fighting for. Okay. There's a lot of value, so.
We come back, we'll talk about the big picture. There's more than just the Ponce House. Stay with us. Welcome back. The good mayor of Pawtucket is with us. So I guess there's other things on your docket than just the Paw Sox, although it must feel like, a big weight, because the psychology of the city is at stake. Yet I think Pawtucket is a lot more than just the Pawtucket Red Sox. I mean, there's been some down city development that I think has been really impressive. There's an arts culture there in Pawtucket
Absolutely.
that I think is worth beating your chest over. And the city's the salt of the earth. It'll survive.
Right.
So, talk to me about the big picture right now in the city, contrasted to now a new governor and the like. How's business, for a simple question?
First of all, from a tax standpoint, we're in a much better position today than we were 4 years ago when I started. And that was what we really concentrated on, is how do we get a stability in our tax structure. It's not perfect. We still have some of the pension obligations, but we're able not to do a tax increase the last couple of years. And that was a good message to the businesses. So we wanted to show some steadiness and some consistency. We have a new company that bought, which is the old Peerless building there, which was where our planning and redevelopment was. They bought it. Pet Food Experts is going to be moving their corporate headquarters in sometime May or June. So there's some activity. Slater Mill in our visitor center. National Park. So there's some great things like that.
I think they're hot spots.
Absolutely. It doesn't help when you have one of your biggest marketing brands, the Paw Sox, is pulling the heart out of you from a marketing standpoint, because it's been there. Besides the history, it's just so important to the community. But we've got like Division Street. We've had some developers interested in the property over there. It's formerly known as what we all call the hotel site, to do some mixed use, high rental residential, some commercial mix. Got some office development happening down on Division Street as well. So there are a lot of good things happening. You're seeing to see some things. It just takes time.
Are you bullish on the next year or two financially for you and for the state?
Yeah, I mean, the governor put a budget out last week. There's a change in the pilot program. It's probably a net decrease to the city of Pawtucket of $100,000. That's not a major hit on our part. We're concerned though because we have a lot of contracts that we've negotiated. So we're looking going forward in 16 about a $5 million hole right now. So we're doing a lot of the things with, the snow didn't help this year either. But we're tightening our belt. We had a SAFER grant that expires in April. We're looking for an extension on that for another 2-year grant. So we're trying to do those things. We've, told employees on that we're trying to balance a lot of the positions through attrition we haven't filled. We've put a freeze on all non-essential, had a position in my office that we're not holding, not hiring rather, and some others as well. So we're trying to set ourselves up as we start getting ready for the 16 budget.
So to some,
yeah,
like many communities, it could go one way or the other pretty quickly. It's kind of a pivotal time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is the determining factor as to whether Pawtucket thrives or fails?
I think financially we're going to thrive. But it's the perception, and that becomes the hard part. Little concerned talking with and the governor has made a change in her budget on tourism. The change, and I think there's a reduction.
I'm not sure I agree with her on that. Until we have a real reason to theme out the entire state.
Yeah.
I'm for centralization, but only when there's the right reason.
Yeah.
And Are you in the same mindset?
Yeah, and that's what I don't understand it fully yet. We're trying to get our hands around it. It was announced on Thursday. I had Bob Billington, who is the Blackstone Valley Tourism president or chair. There's concerns. It's a bad message because it's going to hurt the Blackstone Valley. Based
on one
on
way or the other, if you eventually do get the hammer from the Paw Sox, the state's going to have to kick in and help the city of Pawtucket because we can't afford the city of Pawtucket to be down.
Right.
So it'll be interesting. Come back again, will you?
I will,
Good
absolutely.
To see you,
Thank you.
One more thing when we come back. Stay with us. So Boston had a couple of firsts or bests, I guess, this past weekend. We've got a snow total. Oh my goodness, look at that. The snow total is just completely unbearable up there. We think we got it bad in Rhode Island. It's worse up there. And for the first time, the LGBT folks were allowed into the parade. It's good to have that conversation end. It's just time. All right, we got to rock out of here. We'll see you tomorrow on WPRO and back here tomorrow night. Good night.